What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where me and my good friend Brian discuss comics that have been adapted into movies and streaming shows. Brian and I have valiantly tried to record a review of the last three episodes of Andor. This is our third attempt. Hopefully, there's not going to be any technical difficulties. What do you think, Brian? What are the odds?
I'm hoping we're doing good here, but just know the effort we're putting in here and how badly we want to talk about Andor and the finale
Yes.
because I think at this point I've rewatched it like three times. I didn't watch it this week,
Oh.
but hopefully I remember some things.
You will. Your memory's a lot better than mine. So, rewatching it, what would you say stands out the most for these last three episodes? Like, what part do you get excited to see again and again?
Every part. It's this show overall, how they've crafted it. I think I really do appreciate the first episode 10 the most, probably.
Okay.
Outside of the actual like ending shots, maybe. I really enjoyed the just the confrontation between not confrontation, just the meeting between Dedra and Luthen. Actually, everything that Luthen did in the episode, and then the backstory interwoven with of Clea and Luthen's relationship, how they met, in between her infiltrating the hospital and to make sure he's dead because the Imperials had captured him. That was probably my favorite aspect of the three episodes overall that I like to rewatch. I feel like there's new details I recognize every time I watch it. So that's my answer.
Okay. Casting Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen is kind of a master stroke, and that might be the main reason why the show is so successful. I know that sounds like a white cis male thing to say. Like, there's a lot of lead female characters. The main character, I believe he's from Mexico, Diego Luna. But then to be like, well, this, Slavic white man is the reason why the show is so good. But it's not that. It's that, like, he is a top-notch actor. The show is filled with top-notch actors, but they let him be so much more of a bigger character than the other characters are allowed to be.
Yeah, he is the most important figure in the show, I believe. Oh well,
Yeah.
maybe you could argue Clea, because Clea was essentially, arguably driving his intentions, the driving
Right.
force, driving intentions. But maybe you can make that argument. But you're right. It's like the beginning. It's Andor is trying to escape these Imperial guards because he killed two people, and he eventually runs into Luthen, and Luthen's like the glue that holds this entire show together. The character is fantastic. I love the dual personalities of the kind of gritty spy and the kind of like foppish
Antique dealer?
Yeah, antique dealer. Yeah, it was a great cover, I think, and really all these characters are connected by Luthen. Dedra is looking for Luthen. Bix was a new Luthen and used to identify things, artifact from or fix things for him, I guess. And that's how these introduced Andor and Mon and the Rebellion and all that. It's really, you're right. He's the essential figure.
Yeah. And I think it was Mike Bongiorno that shared that one clip with me, or maybe it was Jay, I don't know. But it's that clip where Luthen's given the speech that he gives in this first episode that you like so much, in episode 10, where he talks about how it's too late. He tells Dedra it's too late. The rebellion has already spread. Now there's an entire galaxy out there of people to disgust you, or something along those lines. And essentially, as he's given that speech in this clip, it shows like, the Battle of Yavin and Luke shooting the torpedoes, and it shows Cassian on the beach at the end of Rogue One with Jyn Erso and them getting obliterated. It shows, Luke and Han celebrating together and them getting their medals. It shows Lando cheering as the second Death Star blows up. It even shows like Rey and people like that in the sequel trilogy. So, like, it really drives home the idea that the rebellion in its form that we know, that we think about so much, this one person was so integral to its formation. And it drives home one of the main themes of the show, which is that, like, some heroes that are so important in history are the people that you don't really know anything about.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point there. Just to add to that too, the just the speech that Andor gives in the 12th episode, just trying to, like, Luthen died for this. This is what he existed for. Like, you wouldn't be here without him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another fantastic performance and speech there as well. But yeah, it's really driving that fact home about Luthen.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we could talk about Luthen for a while, but just in general, it's kind of interesting to try to record this 3 times in a row, and you get all these little bits of information from when the show first airs to the present day. And so I think it's been, I don't know, 3 weeks at this point. Um, and in that time, I've heard some things about Disney and how they're doing financially. Disney Plus. Did you watch that video that I shared with you?
I did, yes. So we're talking about the budget for Andor in total. So it was like 650 million to make both seasons, um, which essentially is like 8 mini movies, which
Right.
to me is kind of a bargain. I
Yeah.
think on this scale here, but they said that, like, I guess it was Bob Iger said that, streaming is dead. This is going to be like the last time you're not going to get like crazy budget cuts or anything like that. Not that Tony Gilroy was going to be making any more of this because the story's told. Um,
Right.
but the idea that is that Disney Plus has been a red mark on Disney, and been a big hole for them financially. So curious to see what they do, if at all, moving forward. I heard a lot of people speculate focusing on animated projects. Then you're going to see a lot less live action stuff, because to make it good and worthwhile, it costs a lot of money, and it doesn't necessarily move the needle for viewership. They said something to the fact that, well, it's still not making Mandalorian viewership numbers, Andor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means like the first season and Mandalorian numbers. I don't even know what is the highest in terms of that. Like, I imagine that first season of Mandalorian, because that was like the first thing on Disney Plus, was the Mandalorian, wasn't it?
Didn't WandaVision come out before that?
I don't think so. I think Mandalorian was first, and the first thing we
Okay.
covered was WandaVision.
Okay.
But
Right, because
I think that was like the thing that made people sign up, was that show.
okay.
And there's probably some interesting techniques involved in calculating that, because there was a lot of, like, discounted trials or free trials and things like that. So maybe all those numbers are being compared to are kind of like semi-fabricated in a way.
Yeah.
There were free trials on this kind of new venture.
Yeah. With this whole situation, to think that it's sort of born out of COVID really kind of blows my mind, right? Because I think that they were essentially trying to cope with the idea that they weren't going to make money in movie theaters anymore. And so they're like, well, how do we still make money? Oh, okay, we're just going to start making things and releasing them on these streaming platforms. And I think they were very exciting. You would get so excited to be like, oh, I can watch all of these movies. I just have to turn on my TV. I just have to look at my phone, and this is all available for me right away. Oh, they're making new stuff, and they're making kind of niche things. But it's just like the bar for quality. I'm not really sure, like, who kind of lowered the standard, and maybe just the idea of Star Wars not being under George Lucas is the thing that set that bar. And not to say that the prequels are amazing, because I actually don't like the prequels very much at all. But it's just 90% of the stuff that we've covered on this channel, that's Star Wars. I have been, like, kind of reluctant to watch it. I've just been kind of like, all right, we got to watch this. But this show, I was like, oh no, we're not going to have any more of this. Like this is sad
Yeah,
that this is
yeah,
going away.
it's the end of an era, which was very short lived because it's really the only thing. But it's funny you say that too, that you were reluctant to watch it because I was reluctant to watch this show.
Yeah,
I didn't like. I liked Rogue One well enough at the time, but like I didn't think I would ever love a show about this character that much. Like I never would have crossed my mind.
yeah. Well, I mean, another thing that kind of ties into this discussion is I know people that are huge Star Wars fans. I work with this one guy who he's in my office and he loves Star Wars. He has all these Darth Vader things at his desk. But with Andor, when he talks to me about it, he kind of does that kind of that voice where he's like, "Oh, I don't know," like that sort of like I'm just not into it kind of voice.
Yeah.
And I've shared with you this one YouTuber. His name is Steve Shrives, and he talks about Star Trek a lot. He talks about politics a lot. And he was talking about how important Andor is as a show, but then he pointed out all of these things he doesn't like about Andor, and it was weird to hear him say that. So to me, yeah, for these people to like, okay, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this isn't for everyone, and for people like us, we watch it and we're like, how could you not love this? This is amazing. But there's just something about it. I think it must be the pacing and the dialogue that some people it just they can't click into it. It just doesn't like work for them. They don't connect.
Um, yeah, it's possible. I think there's an aspect of that um, the original Star Wars movies are sort of just kind of like popcorny in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a lot of brain power to watch them. You know, like you're watching a spectacle. You're watching big space battles and laser swords and all this stuff, and it's you know you can make the argument that there is or isn't a lot under the surface there. I think people have made it out to be probably more than it was intended initially.
Mm-hmm.
I think I even wrote a paper about the Force in college. I honestly think I did. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that's people adding to it and thinking and looking for more than there actually is, which I think happens with a lot of fandoms. They dig deeper
Mm-hmm.
than the intention was. But there definitely is that fan that likes that kind of more actiony, bombastic, just bright, flashy things, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. And then there's people that like these intricate stories with these kind of big emotional payoffs. That for when you're paying attention and something clicks in your brain, it's just amazing. I kind of feel like that's how we view it. And then there are also people too that don't like to be told to watch something and how good it is. They either feel they need to discover it on their own for order to have value, or they just don't like being told what to do. And
Right.
that's definitely a contingent of fans in many fandoms.
Right. I think that the reason why Star Wars might seem to be more, even though it might not be what some people believe it to be, is the John Williams score. I think the John Williams score adds so much to it, and that syncing of the imagery and the music. It's just like it evokes some kind of feeling in you. And of course, George Lucas's ex-wife's edit of the movie, I think, really helps too. The original movie. Then the second one is just that's my favorite Star Wars movies, Empire Strikes Back. And I mean, I can tie this all back to Andor in the sense there are moments in Andor in these 3 episodes that we're discussing today where they are these sort of cinematic moments where it's like a montage of things happening at the same time. There's no dialogue. There's dramatic music playing up, reaching crescendos. But there are a lot of scenes of just like people like they're relaying information to each other. They're not really joking, and they're not necessarily like saying dramatic things. They're just like, "Oh, I need to go pick up this thing at this thing," or "Did you check this signal?" And I think that we live in a culture, and I think this is why streaming might be suffering too, where it's so very easy to just have this on and you're typing an email. You have this on, you're looking at your phone. And Andor is not the kind of show like you'll just tune it all out if you're doing a side thing.
Yes, I will point out a scene, the scene with Dedra and Luthen when they're talking in the antique shop there. where she says she has something spectacular to show, and then she just has this line where she's just like, "Oh, well, now I'm worried. Maybe it's not." And it's so like it's so good to me, but really like what it's not any information really being conveyed there, but it just adds some kind of depth to this conversation and the tension in that in the room there, based on the context we have of that. That's her entire goal of this show was to find him, and she finally did. But just a moment like that perfectly exemplifies what you just said, I think.
Yeah, well, let's kind of take the ball and roll with it with Dedra, because I think these are scenes that some people would tune out, but it's the kind of stuff that I just fucking eat with a spoon. We talked about this in one of our recordings that didn't go through, but there's the scene where Dedra is interrogated by Krennic, and first off, just the cinematography. I'm sorry because you've already heard this, Brian, but like she's the center frame, and he's behind her. He walks in behind her. You just see the bottom of his mouth, which is a menacing image in itself, to not see a person's eyes, to see their mouth. And he's saying these things to her, and every bit of dialogue he says is tight. There's no sort of like fluff, and he's not saying like simple words. He's saying like more grandiose phrases. Then he literally, and this was Ben Mendelsohn's improv, he literally like takes his finger, just sticks it on top of her head when he's asking a question. And I've seen that image so many times in thumbnails just because it's so good, you know?
I love the delivery, the line itself and the delivery of it is just think like, why am I here? Say it, say the word. Just, oh God, it's so good. And then that added little motion of that, which without context probably looks ridiculous, but with context is incredible.
Right. Have you seen the Honest Trailers review of Andor season 2?
Oh, I haven't yet. Oh man, I gotta watch that.
Okay, you can watch it after this, but the guy, the movie voice guy, says like, all the minutia and stuff that makes you miserable in your regular life, now you get to have it in your Star Wars, you know? And it cuts to this like scene where Mon Mothma is trying to get votes from people in the Senate, and she's talking about crime rates and stuff. He's like, happy nerds. And I mean, that's the thing is that guys like you and me, we are happy because like we love this stuff because of the worlds that they're in. Like these little details, these little minutia, just make it feel more like it's a real place that you could just be in.
Yep.
You know,
100%.
When people are just saying dramatic things like this person's going to attack, or like you need to increase your strength, it's like, okay, yes, that's what the story needs. But when they're talking about like, oh, I don't know, this shift didn't report in, or like this message didn't go through, it's like more realistic, and you feel like you're there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, all the little details just make the world feel more lived in and believable, even though it's, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, I've kind of hijacked this and talked a lot, but let's take it back to Luthen for 1 second. Let's take it back to his origin with Clea. Like, you did a really good job of talking about the scene when he discovers her as a child. Do you want to kind of go into that and how that kind of ties into what we're talking about?
Yes. So we're flashing back to Luthen, who is oh my God, I forgot his Sergeant Lear, I believe.
I think you're right.
He's just in a ship, and we're seeing this view from behind the vent, and we're him just having this like PTSD attack. He's just like, make it stop. He's hearing the radios. He shuts the radio off because he just can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this great detail of a soldier coming in. He's like, why isn't the radio? He berates him to get out there, basically. But why isn't the radio on? He turns it back on. And then that's when he comes over to the vent, and he opens it up, and he finds what will be Clea in there. And then he kind of decides to just change his entire life and just rescue this person, and just realizing he was doing was wrong. And it was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a great sequence because they basically have a few different flashbacks. They kind of move forward through the flashbacks. They first meet, then he kind of explains to her what life is going to be like, trying to like trade items to get money, items that he finds, and that's sort of where his antique job comes from. Then he talks about like, if we're going to do this, you have to commit to it. You have to move when I tell you to move. That's one of the last things he says to her. He says to her, move, before they're separated. I also pointed this out last time we recorded, that there's actually multiple scenes in these 3 episodes where either troops or stormtroopers have people stand up against a wall and they shoot them to death. And it's very evocative of World War II imagery with the Nazis, and it shows how scary fascist rule can be. Star Wars has examples of that in the original trilogy, but this show, I think, is the best example of it. And
to another level.
go ahead.
It makes the stormtroopers seem more terrifying. It makes TIE fighters seem more terrifying. All of that, like they seem much more imposing and scary when they take actions like executing people against a wall, explaining about how committing, a multitude of atrocities is better, and to hide behind that rather than just one. All those kind of things, which are again really applicable in the world today. It's making it more scary.
Right. It's so funny because, like, in the previous group of episodes, you have stormtroopers like firing into a crowd of protesters, and then in this, you have them killing people against a wall. One of which is a little boy. They just blast them. Then you think about the original trilogy, and like the stormtroopers that go onto the Millennium Falcon, and they just kind of knock them out, and then they wear their uniforms, or like stormtroopers fighting Ewoks and like getting taken out by rocks and stuff. You're like, this is a different kind of feel here,
It's funny though too, is that you say that like how I've seen people argue. Well, I said before how people have dug into details of it and made it more than it was intentionally originally supposed to be. I've seen theories where the people say the stormtroopers missed everyone in A New Hope on the Death Star because they wanted them to get away, so they can track them back to Yavin, to the rebel base. So it's like things like that. It's like I don't think that was actually intended.
No.
But people dig into it, and it's just kind of too good to be true, almost.
Right. But I like that detail because then it makes more sense and it makes the world much more realistic and livable feeling. Yeah.
You kind of can't use that argument for every stormtrooper action. Like the Ewok thing that's a bit harder to swallow.
Yeah. They're trying to kill them there and they're just fucking up. But I don't think we talked about this in any of our recordings, that when Clea and Luthen act in one of the flashbacks, they bomb a bridge. Do you know what planet that bridge is on?
Who?
Yep. So that's a really cool detail.
That was like a background from like a deleted scene from one of the prequel movies, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a cool detail that I did not pick up on the first watch around, but I see looking at it, knowing that you can tell.
Yeah. So I mean, they got around, and so basically, you guys know this because you've seen the show a while ago, but Luthen stabs himself after he gives this great little speech to Dedra, and then he is taken to the hospital. And I said this in our last recording that like it's extra scary because it's not like he has this heroic death, he dies, and then the rebellion moves on. It's like she says, "No, we're keeping him alive," and so they bring him to a hospital. Also, one thing that I forgot to mention too is there's his mole inside the ISB who goes and talks to him, and he talks to the mole about possibly going to Yavin to escape after he's gotten all this information about the Death Star. And then we have this great scene where it cuts away and then it cuts back to the mole, and he's basically on the bench just with a laser blast in his chest, just dead. So well done.
Another fabulous interaction there. Luthen is coaxing information out of Young, and you can tell that he's not quite, capable or ready to give him the asylum that he's requesting, and he's just trying to get out of it. He's trying to reassure him so he can get the information out of there and get out of there. And then ultimately, just the fact that they didn't show him shoot it, and they just showed the body slumped over later on, after he's already met with Clea and has passed on the information of Gorman and Jeddah and Cal Kite and Galen Erso. Just a great sequence of events, and not having to directly show you it. Just we mentioned this before about how they imply a lot and leave the viewer to figure it out rather than just directly show you everything, which leads back to that. This isn't that passive watching TV show that a lot of shows have become today.
No. And the cleverness of the viewer is rewarded by the cleverness of the show. And that's one of the things that is so important about this show. There's a lot of moments where there's sort of luck, where a character gets away with something because of luck. That happens in this show. But more often than not, it's because a character is clever. Like Luthen is onto the Empire where he's like, we need to go because they are going to be here in like 2 minutes. Like he knows kind of what they're doing a couple of steps ahead versus like stormtroopers show up and he's like, how do we get out of here? There's so many moments like that where they anticipate what the Empire is going to do and so they can react versus like, the Empire attacks and then you react. And
even just when he meets Clea and he says, no, I'll do the whatever, like he's going to go destroy the equipment. I forget what word they use, but he knows he's going to get caught and he'd rather it be him than Clea. So just that alone illustrates your point.
Right. Man, oh God, it's so sad because we aren't going to get this show again or anything like it, just based on the budget stuff that we talked about at the beginning of this recording. But like besides all this dramatic stuff and the fact that Dedra ultimately ends up being imprisoned and being in that same kind of prison that Andor was in the first season. Yes. It's so good, like just so dramatically perfect and ironic. But there is like exciting action and stuff in these episodes too. Like K2SO is a big part of these episodes when they go to extract Clea from Coruscant. Right? What do you think about that? Like, why don't you tell me your thoughts on?
That was a great bunch of sequences. It showcases K2SO. So K2SO is interesting because he is comic relief in Rogue One, really. And there really hasn't been comic relief on this show. And I was sort of worried how it would fit in, but I think it does work pretty well. I also saw in an interview that Tony Gilroy made a comment that it's really hard to write him into scenes because he kind of trivializes things because he's very powerful and fairly indestructible. So they have to leave him on the sidelines a lot. Like he starts off in the ship, staying in the ship while Andor and Melshi go into the building.
Right.
But yeah, they run into trouble there, and it was K2SO to the rescue there, and it works. He makes those kind of joke lines, but it fit, I think.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about this, but watching Rogue One after watching this movie, it's a totally different experience. And K2SO in Rogue One, it's just like you feel completely different about him. Like when we have that Gorman massacre 3 episodes ago, those droids are terrifying. And, I mean, they're scarier than Sentinels and X-Men. They're just these they're like Terminators.
Yeah, you called that particular scene where one of them throws the what's her name, Cara Ryland, or the daughter of the guy who's started the resistance. Really, he just throws her and she just falls and she's dead. Like she's 100 dead. No question about it. Just from being thrown.
Right. And so it's a great way to tell a story because like you see how scary they are and you're like, oh my God, the heroes are so screwed if they have to go against these things. Then they're able to get one, and they get one because of a person that I think they were gonna. Oh no, it's the guy that fucking accidentally killed.
Cinta killed, because he brought a gun. I'm still confused about that scene because he has the gun and the super French guy walks up. Like he's part of the resistance, but he walks up. He wasn't part of the plan, and that's what causes him to pull the gun out. It's still weird to me that he pulled the gun out on that guy, or why that guy wasn't involved. But it happened, and it was a nice redemption moment for that character. That's one name I don't know. I don't know if he even had a name, but
dude,
he runs into K2SO and
No, you're doing a lot better than me with the names, man. Because I forgot a lot of the ancillary people. No, they're able to get him, and he's on the ship, and so you think, okay, well, the Imperials are locking down this block. They're coming to get Clea in this safe house and get Andor and Melshi or whatever. And then it's like, well, but they also just have this fucking Terminator that just walks in. I mean, I know everyone knows what I'm talking about, but there's a one part when he's on the gang plank or whatever with this one ISB agent. He's like, "Are you with us?" And he just swats him away. And he's like, "No." Ah, so fucking good.
Also
So
love
fucking good.
when the leader of that little Imperial squad and the supervisor. So like the supervisor hangs back, and K2 just literally uses him as a human shield, and just you see his like head bobbing like this. Oh man, it looked so cool.
Yeah, I know it's so good, and it's just like I wish that people on a massive scale could appreciate this the way that we can, but I think it's just kind of we absorb so much of this stuff that when something is more in depth or different, we like it more. Whereas a lot of people casually absorb this stuff. We just like fucking inject it into our eyes. So like when we see this, we're like, oh, this is so good. And I mean, it's worth noting that goddamn is Tony Gilroy. Like he's made movies like Michael Clayton and like Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, and he also worked on the Bourne Identity, and I think maybe Bourne Ultimatum. I think is the second one.
It's
but
funny
like
because I've seen none of those things.
You haven't seen any one of those movies?
No.
Okay. Guess what? I'm not going to give you any homework because I know it's fucking annoying. But if I was going to recommend any of those for you, I would recommend Nightcrawler. I think you would like that one.
Well, I like X-Men, so sure. I know.
There you go. Yes. Did you know that he had a Nightcrawler solo movie? And it's mostly him about being in a monastery smuggling mutants out of the country. I know you would. So
I will watch that. I will say that I guess I never really watched like spy movies, so that's kind of one reason why I didn't watch like Bourne or any of the James Bond movies really. But I will say that I have started watching Mission Impossible movies now. So we're only on the second one, but we started.
Okay, the second one is the lamest one in the series, but it's directed by fucking John Woo, so it's still kind of good, even though it's really lame. But then I heard that the most recent one is actually kind of bad too. The one that's in the theaters right now.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, that's a side note. So we're talking about K2SO. We should probably talk about the character who's the show is named after, right?
Oh yeah, that guy. So it's Andor. Again, not a character that I would have thought I would have loved the show about. And I don't want to belittle him or anything like that based on how we talked about Luthen before, but he really is a central figure here as well. He is the hero of the story here. And, this mission he goes on here is kind of off books. He's kind of with the rebellion, but he's still kind of living by his own rules, so he's not completely fully on board. They talk a lot about the different kind of factions of the rebellion and how he separated from Luthen years ago, and he's kind of given it his all here. But in this instance here, there is this like last call message, like do or die. Like if you get this, like it's big trouble. And they receive this kind of Morse code, space Morse code, and Andor and Mel should go rushing back to Coruscant, back to that old apartment he used to live in to rescue Clea. It just shows that Andor was still kind of loyal to his people, really, even though he gave himself fully to the rebellion after Bix left him and when he was kind of conflicted. So great character. I don't really have much to say about what anything he did in the first two episodes, but the speech he gives to that kind of group, the rebel leaders, was fantastic. Just kind of talking about what Luthen meant to everybody, and that he died for the information, and then just all of the last episode was a little more on the slow side. It was just everyone was trying to just gauge the validity of the information they've received, and it's just really a lot of talking about like, oh, do you believe it, or and just. He just kind of gives these reasons why. He's like, yes, he died for this. I believe it. It's got to be true. There's no if, ands, or buts about it.
Right. But it's funny because when you watch Star Wars, your main takeaway is, Luke is able to blow up the Death Star because he uses the Force. That's the whole culmination of it. It's like, oh, he's using the Force. He's believing in the Force. He's believing in himself. He blows up the Death Star. With the invention of Rogue One and ancillary media, it's really talking about how, well, the Death Star was made with a flaw in it, and that's how the rebels were able to blow it up. It's sort of, you would assume that the Force kind of guided things so that there would be a flaw in the Death Star and that someone could exploit it. That someone is Luke. Luke uses the Force. But the idea of Andor, the show, which is usually devoid of the Force, it shows how important that flaw in the Death Star is. The knowledge of the Death Star is important. Like, if they didn't have knowledge of the Death Star, if they didn't have the plans, if they weren't able to get the plans, that thing would be around just blowing up planets left and right. There would be no rebellion. And so, go ahead.
Ultimately, the force that the force that goes to assault the Death Star in A New Hope is not very big.
No.
So
it's like 12 fucking ships.
Yeah, like they had to know what they were doing there, and just a little more than a Hail Mary,
Right, exactly. And it's the Force. And I'm sorry for kind of hogging this, but like with Andor, people always complain about how like he's not the main character, or like the show's named Andor, but he's not really that important on it. It's all the other characters. If you think about his actions and what happens, right? He decides to get Clea. He's like the bridge. She has the information about the Death Star here. He goes and gets it and brings it to the rebellion. And that is so, so important. And that's a big part of Rogue One as well. But had he not done that, had Clea been found and killed, then he wouldn't be able to make the connection about the Death Star and then this pilot that ends up with Saul Guerrero in Rogue One, right? So, like, Andor is so crucial because he's able to be that connective tissue that brings the information that Luthen's got and bring it to the forces of the rebellion. And like that's because I haven't rewatched Rogue One all the way through since watching Andor, but I did watch like the beginning of it. And I love when he runs into that guy. The guy talks about how they found this pilot who's talking about an Imperial weapon, and he mentions Urso, and then Cassian's like, Galen Urso? I love that. I love that because it's like you could tell it's like he just heard about this like fucking hours ago, and now he's connecting it. I love that so much.
It was great. We said before that Luthen was kind of the reason and the connective tissue of the show, but Andor is the one that actions on everything, that moves everything forward. So really, they're both incredibly integral to everything here. And I do think it's worth naming the show after him, even though there are so many other supporting characters that have very high levels of importance. And it really was an ensemble cast, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's named after him, but it could have been something like, Rebel Insurgents or something like that, or like Rebel Birth or Birth of the Rebellion or something like that. Brian, let's take it back to comics. Let's switch it up for a second. Wouldn't you kind of say that if we're going with like X-Men and the Krakoa era, that like Luthen's forces are like X-Force, and then the other rebellion is like the X-Men teams?
No. Saw Gerrera is X-Force.
Oh, all right. Stand corrected. Okay. That's true. They are more extreme. That's good.
Or, maybe they're like the Brotherhood of Mutants, really, because they're kind of doing like messed up shit. Luthen's probably is more appropriate because Luthen's a little bit more on the right side of right, and is a little more logical about it, I guess. Than the kind of the guerrilla warfare of the partisans. So right. I think that's a good comparison.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, man. That's good. I just want to think what else we should cover because the show's so fucking good. I'm gonna miss it. I know that we talked about a lot of things in our various attempts at this. What haven't we brought up that we really liked talking about last two times?
So we didn't talk too much about the Empire outside of Dedra and the scene with Krennic.
Okay, go ahead.
I also love the scene with Krennic and Partagaz where Krennic basically says like, I can't save you this time. And I loved, there was a scene where you heard the voiceover of Nemec back from the heist in Aldhani giving his like manifesto speech, and that Partagaz is listening to, and which ultimately ends up with he was about to be taken away to basically be executed or punished for ultimately allowing these plans to, be stolen. He's getting blamed for it, but they put the pistol on the table, and he's like, "Give me a minute to compose myself," and then you just hear the shot, and I love that whole sequence there. I love that there it just has that kind of villainous organization where they just have to have the scapegoat and they have to like punish everybody. Same thing with Dedra too. It's just very fitting, very fitting that she essentially got, punished for almost like a bureaucratic reason almost. She didn't follow the rules even though she achieved the goal, and they still just like came down on her and they sent her to prison. Great ending there.
Yeah, well, if we go along with Dedra though, because at first I was like, why is she being arrested? I was trying to like kind of make that connection in my head, and I understand why they arrested her. But if you think about her actions actually lead to the destruction of the Death Star too, because like her ambition made her look into other people's files, and then the person that was the mole for Luthen, Young, looked into her files,
Yeah,
and so
he had his code authorizations for like a long time.
Right.
But yeah, they gave you a lot of information about the stuff that she's done to get to where she is, and her quest to finding Axis. They didn't really give throughout the show. Like they mentioned something about how she used to like scavenge for information, how much of information about the Death Star she's seen. We don't see that happen in real time. We just hear about that after the fact. But
right.
It just shows that how driven she was in that task, even though when it wasn't her task anymore. Like she was taken off of that desk and put over on the Gorman initiative there. And then I don't know what I guess I don't know what she was doing after Gorman necessarily, because they don't really go into that. But she was still so obsessed with it, with finding Axis.
So, yeah, I think she just was focusing on finding Axis. Right?
Because here the other guy who uses the meat shield, he was on Axis. That was his job. So I don't know what he was doing after the whole Gorman thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know either. Yeah, but like her actions are what essentially gets the information from the Imperials to the mole to the rebels.
Yeah.
Like I think I've seen a thumbnail before where it's like her actions led to the destruction of the Death Star. It's like, yeah, they do. So I think we should talk about kind of the body count and where the show leaves off for these characters. Like there's obviously characters that live in the future Star Wars movies, like Mon Mothma. We always knew she was going to live. Did you think that her cousin and Bix and I'm trying to think who else lives by the end of the show? Dedra.
Clea,
like, did you think
Dedra, Vel, I guess Will.
Yeah.
I guess Will's potentially alive. We know Melshi and Andor are dead.
Right.
General Draven's potentially around. I think Admiral the Akbar guy, the Mon Calamari guy. I think he dies in Rogue One, doesn't he?
Yeah, his ship is the one that Vader's on.
Yeah.
When he's fucking dead. He's fucking sushi, man.
Yeah, he is. Yes.
Yeah.
But they killed a decent amount of the characters. I mean, all the Imperials that were characters are essentially dead because Krennic is dead. Partagaz is dead. Oh, no, we said Dedra already. She's potentially alive. Hurt is dead. Young is dead. There is that other ISB guy whose name I don't remember.
Yeah, the bald one.
Bald, but I don't remember his name. He was the guy that was about to take Partagaz away.
Yeah.
He potentially could be alive, I guess.
Yeah,
we kind of knew that going into this, that outside of the few characters we see in the movies, that their fates were very up in the air.
Yeah. And I've seen people, like I've seen a meme where they used AI and they made it to where Bix and Cassian's son was Poe Dameron. And like as a guy who reads the Star Wars comics and reads the novels and stuff, they're not his parents,
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting idea. I do kind of like when things connect in a way too, but at the same time it sort of makes everything smaller in a way.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was some people that also thought that Clea might have been Cassian's sister too, but I mean, they sort of do look alike. You get a flash of his sister in the end sequencing of the last episode there, but I mean, Tony Gilroy shot that down. But again, it makes the universe smaller. Like not everything has to be connected.
Yeah.
But sometimes it works really well when it is.
Right, right. Yeah, it's really exciting. I personally would love to have a sort of sequel era story that shows the child of Cassian and Bix and like what they're doing. I'd be into that.
Yeah, because I suppose that character would be approximately late 30s, early 40s after, maybe like the Mandalorian era, I guess. And that's
Um,
5 years after Return of the Jedi, right?
yeah, so Kylo Ren is 30 in The Force Awakens.
Oh, okay.
And
So
he
okay.
he, he was like conceived in like on Endor, right? So like and Ray is like 19. So I think Cassian's kid, because I think there's like 5 years between A New Hope and Jedi. I think that's the time frame. So like we're talking about a person who's like 35 or something, maybe like early 30s,
Okay.
mid 30s.
I was more
Yeah,
so thinking about oh, I guess I said the wrong number then. The around the time of Mandalorian, which is well before
Mandalorian's. Yeah, that's
well
all.
before the sequels.
Yeah, Mandalorian's like 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yes, yeah. So
So then the
that
kid would be like 10 or something.
yeah. So okay, so I was totally wrong with that time frame then. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I don't even know why I even bothered speculating because it's like we're not going to get more of this. We're probably not going to get more of these characters.
And even if they did, who knows? It would be good.
Yeah, right. It would be like some kind of comic that doesn't really have that big of an impact on this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess one way to kind of like wrap this up is what could they do that could be as exciting as this? What could they do? Like, could they do a movie, like a Star Wars movie that could kind of get us this excited about Star Wars? Because I just feel like we're just going to go back to this sort of like lukewarm feeling, haha, pun intended, about Star Wars after this now.
So I think the really important thing here to note about this show is that it does it is filling in holes on an established story, and that's why it makes it so good. It adds context to an established story that was good on itself on its own, and it made it better. So they need to take something that exists that's good and then build something around that to make it better. Uh, how that's why a lot of the things in the show that worked. I think. I don't know if
Yeah.
they can come out the gate and just make something original necessarily that uh, that could be this good. I think the fact that it had something previous to tie into actually worked in its favor here. And I know that a lot of people are kind of tired of uh, the connectivity of things, especially with like Marvel and Star Wars to a lesser extent, I suppose. Like people that don't want to do homework to watch them, they want to watch something. But I really think that the homework here, which I made the argument that the minimum required watching of this is A New Hope. I think that's really what elevated this show is that it built upon a great foundation of something. And I don't know what they have currently that works in that fashion. Like what would be the great foundation there, especially when you talk about the time post
Jedi.
Jedi,
Yeah.
the Republic wins. The Empire is there. They're kind of scattered, and I know you have the First Order and all that, but I don't think the First Order would have the same kind of impact that the Empire had in this show.
No fucking way. They cut their legs off underneath them. Like they did it like Anakin with Obi-Wan and Anakin, where like the idea that the First Order is run by Supreme Leader Snoke, but then he also happens to be like this puppet of Palpatine and stuff. It's just, it becomes
Somehow
goofy.
Palpatine returned.
Right. Exactly. So and in the comics they've tried to like rectify it and they've kind of tried to make it better. It works on some level, but it's just we're not going to see this level of storytelling in Star Wars the way that we did in this show.
No, I don't think so. I think this was kind of a one in a million kind of thing, and I'm mourn its loss, and that's pretty much all we're gonna get.
Yeah. 1 in a million shot, kid. Right? That's what Han says at the very
Right,
end of New Hope.
right.
Yeah. So Brian, miraculously, we made it through this recording without any glitches.
There we go.
Do you want to? It sounded like you kind of had like the closing sentence there, but is there anything else you want to make sure you cover for Andor?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Good. Okay. Good. So Brian and I, as long as we keep having these good quality recordings with no glitches, I think we're going to move on and record some more. We're sort of wondering what content we should cover between now and Ironheart, which is like something else we're like reluctantly wanting to cover. We talked about watching some of the classic Superman movies, like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. If you guys have any recommendations, please put them in there. Did you just say to me something else? Oh, Sandman, right?
Sandman's coming early July, yeah.
Yes.
August too. Is Peacemaker August or is Peacemaker September?
Oh, I think Peacemaker is August. I do think Peacemaker is August. Yeah. Yeah, and then I just shared with Danny, who's on my other channel, the Lassercast, and Brian. I shared with them that there's the trailer for Alien Earth, and I was like, maybe we should cover that on this channel. Maybe we should do it on the Lassercast. So I think we might have like at least a little bit of crossover with that too. We'll be covering that when that comes out, and that's August too.
Yeah, so there'll be some stuff for us to do, and obviously there's the big Superman movie. There's Fantastic Four. There's something else. Probably something else I'm forgetting. Oh,
yes.
Gen V season 2 is September, I think, too.
A trailer for that just dropped too.
Yeah. I don't think I saw the trailer. I think I just saw like a poster for it so far.
Yeah, man. Okay. So there's stuff coming up. So if you guys want to see two middle-aged men talk about stuff that they know a little bit about, come check out our channel. After 3 fucking recordings, we finally got our Andor money shot, and we will see you guys next time.